Two presidents and allies sitting together but not talking the same language when it comes to the planned summit. US President Trump suggested a possible delay in the upcoming meeting, even as South Korea's President Moon talked as though the Singapore summit was still on track.
There are certain conditions that we want, and I think we'll get those conditions. And if we don't have the meeting. And if it doesn't happen, maybe it'll happen later. Maybe it'll happen at a different time. But we will see.
We are looking forward to the first ever US-North Korea summit, and we find ourselves standing one step closer to the dream of achieving complete denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula and world peace.
Trump talked of a changed attitude from the DPRK about getting rid of its nuclear weapons, even at one stage pointing the finger at China, suggesting something may have happened at the second meeting between President Xi and Kim Jong-un. But for both the DPRK and South Korea, Pyongyang's recent reticence stems from this man, US National Security Advisor John Bolton, who compared the current negotiations with the DPRK to those with Libya, which gave up its nuclear weapons research in 2003. Libya's leader, Muammar Gaddafi, was overthrown and killed after a Western-backed intervention in 2011. Well, the DPRK reacted angrily to that comparison. Last week, a top DPRK official issued this statement. This is not an expression of intention to address the issue through dialogue, he said. It is essentially a manifestation of an awfully sinister move to impose on our dignified state the destiny of Libya or Iraq, which had been collapsed due to the yielding of their countries to big powers. And it's not just the DPRK. This from a former South Korean unification minister and lawmaker in Moon Jae-in's party. There are several landmines on the way to the summit between North Korea and the US, he said. One of those landmines just exploded. John Bolton. US President Trump is rejecting the Libya model and said Tuesday he was prepared to guarantee Kim Jong-un's safety if a deal was reached. But just 3 weeks from this planned summit, and there are still deep differences about how any deal would be negotiated. The White House wants Pyongyang to essentially give up all its nuclear weapons before any economic incentives are given. Pyongyang and Seoul want a step-by-step approach that will build trust over time. Nathan King, CGTN, at the White House.
Let's get back now to our correspondent, Jack Barton, who is joining us from Seoul. And Jack, what would you say are the key takeaways from the Trump-Moon meeting?
The key takeaway is perhaps just how close the potential meeting between Trump and Kim Jong-un has come to being called off. I think that is what is really clear after this meeting, particularly the remarks from Moon Jae-in before he headed into that meeting with Trump, making it very clear that he was there to persuade Donald Trump to keep that meeting in place. And he said he was aware that people here in South Korea and in the United States had grown wary after 25 years of disappointments in talks and the attitude from the DPRK reneging on so many of the deals. And he said he understands there is a lot of skepticism in the administration in Washington and amongst the general public. But he said, you know, there might have been no big developments in the past if everyone had just remained skeptical and expected failure just because they'd experienced failure in the past. And so Moon said this is why they had to just keep pressing on without blinking. And that was really what he went in there to convince Donald Trump to keep pressing forward with these negotiations, regardless of the obstacles that are coming up. And it appears that he may have achieved that, because we know from reports in the US that Donald Trump has been asking his staff whether he should call this meeting off. And he even said it again that he's still thinking about it, might happen at a later date. But you know, again, he committed to it, and two, he showed a bit of flexibility, which no doubt Moon Jae-in had been pushing for, saying that even though he wanted it in a time frame, he understood that there were practical realities and that some things might take time. And of course, while the DPRK might be able to ship out some of its nuclear weapons, dismantling nuclear reactors does take a number of years. It took South Korea 10 years just to dismantle a small one. So, you know, we're hearing a slightly more realistic tone from Donald Trump, and just the fact that he's pressing on with this summit, we can consider that the Moon Jae-in-Donald Trump meeting was a success.
All right, Jack Barton live in Seoul. Jack, thank you.